What happens when a single mother, pouring her heart into every moment to keep her child's world spinning, is stripped of her dignity in front of strangers? What happens when someone with the power to rewrite her story is watching from the shadows, ready to act? This is a tale of courage, compassion, and the quiet moments that prove no one should ever feel invisible. Step into Morning Brew Cafe, where the aroma of fresh coffee mingles with the weight of unspoken struggles. And let's see how one morning can change everything. It was a crisp Tuesday morning in the small town of Willow Creek, where Morning Brew Cafe stood as a cozy beacon on Main Street. The air inside hummed with the scent of roasted coffee beans and warm cinnamon rolls, the kind that made you feel at home even if you were just passing through. Sunlight streamed through wide windows, casting golden patches on warm wooden tables. The soft clink of mugs and the murmur of conversation filled the space. Locals swapping stories, office workers grabbing to-go lattes, and retirees savoring their daily ritual. Behind the counter, a woman moved with quiet purpose, her tired eyes betraying the strength she carried. Her name was Emma Thompson, and this was her world, a fragile balance of hope and exhaustion. But today, that balance would tip. Something was brewing at Morning Brew, something bigger than coffee, and it all began with a single, unnoticed glance from a man in the corner, watching her every move. Emma Thompson was 32, though the lines around her eyes whispered of years heavier than her age. Her dark hair was pulled into a messy bun, strands escaping as she darted between tables, and her faded apron bore faint stains of yesterday's coffee. But her smile, warm, genuine, the kind that made customers linger, never faltered. To the regulars at Morning Brew, she was the heart of the cafe, the one who remembered their orders and asked about their grandkids. To her 7-year-old son, Noah, she was everything. Mom, superhero, the one who made the world safe. To herself, though, Emma often felt like a ghost, fading into the background of a life that hadn't turned out as planned. 3 years ago, Emma's world had cracked open. She'd been a design student once, sketching bold ideas for vibrant interiors, dreaming of a career that would light up spaces and lives. But then her husband, Mark, walked out, leaving her with a toddler, a stack of bills, and a half-finished degree. The betrayal stung, but the silence that followed was worse. No apologies, no explanations, just a void where her plans used to be. Emma had clawed her way forward, taking the job at Morning Brew to keep a roof over Noah's head. Double shifts, late nights, and every penny saved for school supplies or the occasional treat, a new book for Noah, who loved stories about knights and dragons. She'd given up her own dreams, but she'd never let Noah see her falter. Yet the weight of it all pressed on her. Mornings like this, when the cafe buzzed with orders and her feet ached before noon, she felt invisible. She'd catch her reflection in the glass door pail, warm, a stranger to the woman she'd once been, and wonder if anyone truly saw her. At home, she kept a small notebook, her secret refuge, where she scribbled fragments of her heart. I want Noah to have everything I didn't, but what if I'm not enough? Last night, she'd written about a dream fleeting and foolish, of taking Noah to the amusement park an hour away, where he could ride the roller coaster he'd seen in a commercial. It felt impossible, but those pages held her together. This morning, Emma was already behind. Noah had woken with a fever, and she'd stayed up soothing him, promising he'd feel better by the time she got home from work. She'd left him with her neighbor, Mrs. Clara, a kind widow who watched Noah when Emma's shifts ran long. Now, as she refilled coffee pots and smiled through her exhaustion, she clung to the thought of Noah's giggle, the one thing that made every sacrifice worth it. But the cafe was busier than usual, and the air felt charged, like a storm was coming. Emma didn't know it yet, but someone was about to really see her for the first time in years. Morning Brew Cafe was the heartbeat of Willow Creek, a place where time seemed to slow. Its walls were adorned with local art watercolors of rolling hills and quirky sketches of coffee cups with faces. The counter gleamed under warm lights, lined with glass jars of homemade cookies and pastries that Emma helped bake on quieter days. Customers filled the space with life. Mr. and Mrs. Harris, the elderly couple who came every Tuesday for their decaf and crossword. Lisa, a young paralegal, who typed furiously on her laptop between sips of espresso, and a rotating cast of delivery drivers, retirees, and moms with strollers. The cafe was a microcosm of the town, and Emma was its quiet conductor, keeping the rhythm steady. But not everyone matched the cafe's warmth. Greg Sullivan, the manager, was a looming presence at 48, with a stern jaw and eyes that seemed to search for flaws. He'd been at Morning Brew for a decade, ruling it like a fiefdom, and Emma was his favorite target. Greg thrived on control, barking orders and nitpicking details, a smudge on a glass, a second's delay in service. To him, Emma's quiet diligence was a challenge, a refusal to snap back an invitation to push harder. She needed the job too much to fight, and he knew it. Emma wasn't alone behind the counter. Sarah Miller, a 25-year-old with nervous energy and a quick laugh, was her closest ally. Sarah admired Emma's strength, but worried about her, often slipping her an extra muffin when Greg wasn't looking. "You're a saint, Emma," she'd whisper, though she shied away from confronting Greg's temper. Then there was Mike, the kitchen hand, a lanky 20-something who spent more time joking than working. His careless mistakes, like forgetting to prep sandwiches, often fell on Emma to fix, adding to her load. This morning, as the breakfast rush hit, Sarah was scrambling to keep up. Mike was humming off-key in the back, and Greg was already glaring at Emma from across the room. The customers, too, played their part. Mrs. Harris, with her silver hair and gentle voice, always left a generous tip and a kind word, sensing Emma's struggles. Lisa, distracted by deadlines, barely noticed the tension, but her presence grounded the scene in routine. As Emma weaved through the tables, balancing trays and smiles, she felt the familiar ache of being seen, yet unseen appreciated, but only on the surface. And in the corner, unnoticed by all, a man in a neatly pressed shirt sipped his coffee, his gaze lingering on Emma with an intensity that hinted at something more. The rush was in full swing when it happened. Emma was juggling 3 tables, refilling Mr. Harris's coffee while taking Lisa's order for a to-go cappuccino. Her hands moved fast, but her mind was stretched thin Noah's fever. The rent due next week, the way her shoes pinched after hours on her feet. She didn't notice the order slip for table 6 was wrong until Greg's voice cut through the din, sharp and loud enough to turn heads. "Emma, you messed up table 6 again." Greg stood by the counter, arms crossed, his tone dripping with disdain. "How hard is it to get a simple order right? 2 lattes, not espressos. Do I need to write it down for you?" Emma froze, her cheeks flushing as eyes flicked toward her. "I'm sorry, Greg," she said, her voice soft, trembling at the edges. "I'll fix it right now." She turned to the espresso machine, her hands shaking as she started over. The customers at table 6, a pair of businessmen, exchanged glances but said nothing. Mrs. Harris frowned, her pencil pausing over her crossword, while Lisa kept typing, oblivious. Greg wasn't done. "Sorry doesn't cut it, Emma," he snapped, stepping closer, his voice carrying over the hum of the cafe. "If you paid half as much attention to your job as you do to whatever's distracting you, maybe you'd be worth keeping around." The words landed like a slap, and Emma felt a lump rise in her throat. She wanted to shrink, to disappear, but she kept her head down, focusing on the hiss of the milk steamer. She couldn't afford to cry. Not here, not now. Sarah, wiping down a nearby table, shot Emma a sympathetic look, but stayed silent, her fear of Greg's wrath outweighing her urge to speak. Mike, peeking from the kitchen, smirked, as if the drama were entertainment. The air in the cafe shifted, the warmth replaced by an uncomfortable tension. Emma felt every stare, every whisper, as she handed the corrected lattes to table 6 with a forced smile. "So sorry about that," she murmured, her voice barely audible. Unseen by all, the man in the corner, James Carter, set his coffee down, his jaw tightening. His notebook lay open, a single line scrawled in neat handwriting. Manager's behavior unacceptable. He leaned back, his calm exterior masking the decision forming in his mind. For Emma, the moment was just another bruise on a heart already heavy. But for James, it was the spark that would ignite a chain of events no one in Morning Brew could have predicted. In the far corner of Morning Brew, James Carter sat quietly, blending into the scene like any other customer. At 42, he carried an air of understated authority, dark hair flecked with gray, kind eyes that missed nothing, and a navy shirt that was professional yet unassuming. To the casual observer, he was just a man enjoying his coffee, scrolling through his phone. But James was no ordinary patron. He was the CEO of Morning Brew's parent company, a chain of cafes spanning the Northeast, and today he was here undercover. James rarely visited locations himself, preferring to let regional managers handle operations. But a string of complaints about the Willow Creek branch, poor service, low morale, had caught his attention. He decided to see it for himself, not as a suit from corporate, but as a customer, invisible to the staff. He wanted the truth, unfiltered, and what he'd seen so far troubled him deeply. The cafe had potential, its charm undeniable, but the atmosphere was strained, and the source was clear: Greg Sullivan. What drew James's eye, though, was Emma. From the moment he'd walked in, he'd noticed her, the way she moved with quiet efficiency, her smile a shield against exhaustion. He saw the way she paused to chat with Mrs. Harris, the care she took wiping down tables, the flicker of strain. When Greg snapped at her, there was something about her, a resilience that reminded him of his own past. 10 years ago, James had been a single father, raising his daughter Lily after his wife, Ellen, died of cancer. The grief had nearly broken him, but the responsibility of being Lily's everything had forced him to keep going. He recognized its same weight in Emma, the silent strength of someone carrying more than they let on. As he watched her now, correcting the lattes with trembling hands, James felt a pang of something personal. He jotted another note: employee, Emma, dedicated, mistreated. He didn't know her story, but he didn't need to. He'd been where she was, invisible to a world that didn't care to look closer. And as Greg's voice echoed again, berating her for a smudge on a glass, James knew he wouldn't stay silent for long. The morning was far from over, and Morning Brew was about to become the stage for a reckoning. The hum of Morning Brew Cafe had turned frantic as the breakfast rush peaked. Plates clattered, the espresso machine hissed, and customers' voices blended into a restless buzz. Emma Thompson darted between tables, her apron streaked with coffee stains, her smile stretched thin. She'd already fixed the latte mix-up for table 6, but the sting of Greg Sullivan's public reprimand lingered, a bruise on her already weary heart. She told herself to get through the shift, get home to Noah, but the air felt heavier now, charged with the promise of something worse. Greg, stationed by the counter like a hawk, hadn't let up. His eyes followed Emma, searching for another misstep. She was wiping down a table when he struck again, his voice slicing through the cafe's noise. "Emma, you call this clean?" He gestured at a barely visible smudge on the table, his tone loud enough to draw stares. "If you spent less time daydreaming and more time doing your job, maybe this place wouldn't be such a mess." Emma's hands froze on the rag, her cheeks burning. "I'm sorry, Greg," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. She scrubbed the spot harder, though it was already gone, willing herself to stay invisible. Customers glanced over, some uncomfortable, others indifferent. Lisa, the paralegal, looked up from her laptop, frowning, while Mr. Harris muttered something to his wife, his crossword forgotten. Sarah, restocking sugar packets nearby, bit her lip, wanting to speak but paralyzed by Greg's glare. Greg stepped closer, his shadow looming over Emma. "Sorry's your favorite word, isn't it?" he sneered. "Maybe if you weren't so busy playing single mom, you'd actually be useful around here." The words hit like a punch, sharp and personal. Emma's breath caught, her eyes stinging with unshed tears. She thought of Noah, his feverish face this morning, his trust that she'd make everything okay. She couldn't lose this job, not when rent was due, not when Noah needed her. She swallowed the lump in her throat and kept wiping, her hands trembling. But Greg wasn't done. As Emma moved to clear a tray of empty mugs, he spotted a drop of coffee she'd spilled on the counter. "Unbelievable," he barked, loud enough for the entire cafe to hear. "You can't even pour coffee without making a mess. What are you even good for, Emma?" The room seemed to shrink, every eye on her. Mike, leaning out from the kitchen, chuckled as if it were a joke. Sarah's face paled, her hands twisting her apron. Mrs. Harris set down her mug, her gentle eyes narrowing at Greg. Emma's heart pounded, her vision blurring. She wanted to scream, to tell Greg he was wrong, that she was more than his punching bag. But the words wouldn't come. She felt small, exposed, like a child caught in a storm. She grabbed a rag to clean the spill, her movements mechanical, her mind screaming, "Just get through this." For Noah. In the corner, James Carter's pen paused over his notebook, his jaw tight. He wrote a single word, enough. Greg's final blow came as Emma reached for a stack of napkins, her hands still shaking. One slipped, fluttering to the floor, and Greg pounced. "Look at you, Emma," he said, his voice dripping with contempt. "Can't even hold on to a napkin. Maybe if you had your life together, you wouldn't be stuck in a dead-end job like this." The cafe fell quiet, the weight of his words hanging in the air. Emma knelt to pick up the napkin, her knees weak, her world tilting. She was breaking, and everyone could see it. Emma slipped into the narrow hallway behind the counter, the noise of the cafe muffled by the swinging door. The employee break room was a cramped space with a chipped table, a flickering light, and a mirror that showed too much. She leaned against the wall, her breath shallow, her hands clenched to stop the trembling. Greg's words echoed in her head, dead-end job, single mom, useless, each one a knife twisting deeper. She caught her reflection in the mirror, pale, hollow-eyed, a woman she barely recognized. Is this all I am? She thought, the question cutting sharper than Greg's insults. She sank into a chair, pulling her notebook from her apron pocket. It was her lifeline, the place where she poured out what she couldn't say aloud. Her pen hovered, then scratched out a line. "I'm trying so hard, but it's never enough. Noah deserves better than this." The words blurred as tears welled up, but she blinked them back. Crying wouldn't help. Nothing would. She thought of Noah, his fever this morning, the way he'd clung to her and whispered, "You're the best mom." She'd smiled, hiding her fear that she was failing him. What if she lost this job? What if they ended up on the street, her promises to Noah crumbling like the dream she'd buried? A memory surfaced, unbidden. Her mother, long gone, sitting with her at their old kitchen table, saying, "Emma, you're stronger than you know. Life will test you, but you'll rise." She believed it then, a girl with sketches of bright futures. Now, those words felt like a lie. She wasn't strong, she was crumbling, piece by piece, under Greg's cruelty and the weight of a life that kept demanding more. She flipped to an earlier page in her notebook, one she'd written months ago. One day, I'll take Noah to that amusement park. I'll see him laugh, fearless, on the roller coaster. I'll be the mom he deserves. The dream felt like a taunt now, as distant as the stars. Emma pressed her palms to her eyes, forcing herself to breathe. She couldn't fall apart, not with Noah waiting, not with bills piling up. But the shame of Greg's words clung to her, a poison seeping into her bones. She wanted to fight back, to tell him she was more than his scapegoat, but fear held her. Silent. Losing this job meant losing everything. She stood, tucking the notebook away, and splashed cold water on her face. The mirror showed the same tired woman, but she straightened her shoulders, whispering, "For Noah." She had to go back out there, face the stairs, face Greg. She didn't know how much more she could take, but she'd keep going. She always did. Asterisk. Back in the cafe, James Carter sat motionless, his coffee long gone cold. His notebook was open, pages filled with neat observations. Manager demoralizes staff, prioritizes control over service. Customer experience suffers. But his focus was on Emma, the woman who'd returned from the hallway with red-rimmed eyes and a forced smile. He'd watched her all morning, the way she apologized to customers for Greg's rudeness, the care she took with every task, the flicker of pain she hid so well. She reminded him of himself a decade ago, when he was a young widower, drowning in grief and responsibility, certain the world would never see him again. James wasn't just the CEO of Morning Brew's parent company. He was a man who'd built his life on second chances. After Ellen's death, he'd raised Lily alone, juggling late-night feedings and a fledgling business. A mentor, an old professor, had seen his potential and given him a loan to start the first Morning Brew. That act of faith had changed everything, and James had vowed to pay it forward. Now, watching Emma endure Greg's relentless attacks, he felt that vow stirring. Greg wasn't just a bad manager. He was a bully, poisoning the cafe's spirit and crushing someone who deserved better. He flipped to a new page, writing, "Emma, resilient, dedicated, undervalued. Must address immediately." His mind flashed to a moment from his past when a colleague had mocked him in a boardroom, dismissing him as a grieving dad who'd never make it. The humiliation had burned, but a partner's quiet support had pulled him through. Emma had no one, and that realization settled like a stone in his chest. He glanced at Greg, now berating Sarah for a minor error, and then at Emma, serving a customer with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Enough was enough. James's phone buzzed, a message from his assistant about a board meeting, but he ignored it. This wasn't about reports or numbers. This was about people, the heart of what Morning Brew stood for. He'd come to Willow Creek to diagnose a problem, but he'd found a story, one he couldn't walk away from. He closed his notebook, his decision made. He wouldn't let Emma's light be dimmed, not when he had the power to change her path. He stood, adjusting his shirt, his calm exterior masking the resolve within. It was time to act. He approached the counter, his voice steady but firm. "Excuse me," he said, loud enough to draw attention. Greg turned, his frown deepening. "Can I help you, sir?" James met his gaze, unflinching. "I'd like to speak to the manager." Greg puffed out his chest. "That's me." James nodded, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Good. Then we have a lot to discuss." The cafe seemed to hold its breath, every eye turning to the man who'd been invisible until now. Emma paused, a tray in her hands, her heart pounding. For reasons she couldn't name. Something was about to change, and Morning Brew would never be the same. A month had passed since that fateful Tuesday at Morning Brew Cafe, and the air inside the cozy Willow Creek haven felt different, lighter, warmer, alive. The scent of fresh coffee still mingled with cinnamon rolls, but now, laughter and easy. Chatter filled the space, a testament to the woman who'd stepped into its heart. Emma Thompson, once the invisible server, was now the manager, her apron swapped for a neat blazer, her tired eyes bright with purpose. The role was daunting, but she'd taken it on with the same quiet strength that had carried her through years of struggle, and Morning Brew was thriving under her touch. Emma's first days as manager had been a whirlwind. She'd inherited a staff rattled by Greg Sullivan's Rain-Sarah's nerves, Mike's laziness, and a lingering tension that made even the regulars wary. But Emma saw potential where Greg saw flaws. She started small, morning huddles to boost morale, a suggestion, box for staff ideas, and a playlist of soft jazz that made the cafe feel like a home. She worked late, poring over inventory spreadsheets, her lack of formal training a hurdle she tackled with dogged determination. When she stumbled miscalculating a supply order, forgetting a vendor call, she felt the old self-doubt creep in, whispering she wasn't enough. But then she'd think of Noah, his proud grin when she told him, "Mom's the boss now," and she'd push forward. The staff noticed the change. Sarah, once timid, blossomed as Emma's right hand, confidently training new hires. Mike, to everyone's surprise, stopped slacking, inspired by Emma's fairness and the extra shifts she gave him to help with his rent. "You're not like Greg," he'd mumbled one day, stacking plates without being asked. "You actually care." Emma smiled, hiding how much it meant. The customers felt it too. Mrs. Harris, the elderly regular, brought her a homemade scarf, saying, "This place feels like family again." Lisa, the paralegal, started hosting her book club at the cafe, drawn by the new energy. Emma even launched a Friday night open mic where locals strummed guitars or read poetry, turning Morning Brew into a community hub. But challenges lingered. A rival cafe opened across town, siphoning some regulars, and Emma worried about meeting sales targets. She lay awake at night, her notebook open, scribbling fears. What if I failed them all? Yet each morning, she walked into Morning Brew, greeted by Sarah's wave and the clink of mugs, and found the courage to keep going. She wasn't perfect, but she was learning, growing, becoming the leader she'd never imagined she could be. For the first time, Emma felt like she belonged, not just to the cafe, but to herself. She wasn't invisible anymore, and that truth fueled her every step. One crisp autumn morning, as leaves skittered across Main Street, James Carter stepped back into Morning Brew. Emma was behind the counter, laughing with Sarah over a botched latte art attempt when she saw him. Her heart skipped not from fear, but from gratitude for the man who changed her life. James, in a navy sweater and his usual calm demeanor, smiled as he took in the cafe's new vibe. Fairy lights strung along the walls, a chalkboard announcing poetry night, and customers lingering like they never wanted to leave. "Emma," he said, approaching the counter, "you've done something special here." She blushed, brushing flour off her hands. "Just trying to keep up, Mr. Carter." He chuckled, insisting she call him James. Over coffee, he shared his observations. Sales were up, customer reviews glowed, and staff turnover had plummeted. "You're not just managing," he said, his eyes kind but serious. "You're building something. I want you to take it further." James offered her a role at Morning Brew's corporate office in Burlington, an hour away, as a regional coordinator, overseeing multiple cafes. The job came with a higher salary, health benefits, and flexible hours to spend with Noah. Emma's breath caught, the opportunity dazzling yet terrifying. "I'm not sure I'm ready," she admitted, her voice small. "I've never done anything like that." James leaned forward, his gaze steady. 10 years ago, I was a single dad, barely keeping my head above water. Someone believed in me, and it changed everything. I see that same strength in you, Emma. You're ready, you just need to trust yourself. She thought of Noah, of the amusement park trip she'd promised, now within reach. She thought of her notebook, filled with dreams she'd buried. But doubt lingered. Could she handle the pressure? The commute? The weight of more responsibility? James sensed her hesitation and shared a story. How he'd nearly turned down his first CEO role, fearing he'd fail his daughter, Lily. "I was scared," he said, "but I learned you don't have to be fearless. You just have to show up." His words echoed her mother's long-ago advice, and Emma felt a spark ignite. "Okay," she said, her voice steady. "I'll do it." James grinned, handing her his card. "Welcome to the team, Emma." As Emma prepared for her new role, her connection with James deepened, rooted in shared understanding. One afternoon, he invited her and Noah to a local harvest festival, bringing his daughter, Lily, now 12, with bright eyes and a quick wit. The kids hit it off, racing through hay mazes and sharing cotton candy, while Emma and James strolled behind, talking. The festival's lights glowed against the dusk, and for the first time in years, Emma felt unburdened, like she could breathe. James opened up about his past, his voice soft but steady. His wife, Ellen, had died of leukemia when Lily was 2, leaving him to navigate grief and fatherhood alone. "I felt like I was failing her every day," he admitted, watching Lily laugh with Noah. "But I kept going for her." Emma nodded, recognizing that same drive in herself. She shared her own story, not just Mark's betrayal, but the dreams she'd shelved, like designing vibrant spaces that made people feel alive. "I thought that part of me was gone," she said, her voice catching. James shook his head. It's still there. You just need a chance to let it out." He suggested she enroll in a part-time interior design course, offering to adjust her work schedule. Emma hesitated, the idea both thrilling and daunting, but James's belief in her was an anchor. "You saw me when no one else did," she said, her eyes meeting his. "I don't know how to thank you." He smiled, a quiet warmth in his expression. "You're doing it, Emma. You're shining." Their bond wasn't romantic, but profound, a friendship forged in empathy and respect. Two people who'd walked through darkness and found light in helping each other dot at the festival's end. Noah and Lily begged for one more ride, and Emma watched them, her heart full. She thought of her notebook, the pages once heavy with doubt now filling with hope. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was building a future for Noah, for herself. 3 months later, Emma stood in her new office at Morning Brew's Burlington. Headquarters, a small space with a window overlooking snowy hills. Her desk held a photo of her and Noah at the amusement park, his face lit with joy as they rode the roller coaster she'd promised. She'd enrolled in the design course, her evenings filled with sketches that felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. Noah was thriving, his bedtime stories now peppered with dreams of being an architect, inspired by his mom's passion. Emma opened her notebook, now a mix of fears and triumphs, and wrote, "I'm not invisible anymore. I'm Emma Thompson, and I can do anything." She visited Morning Brew often, greeted like family by Sarah, now assistant manager, and Mrs. Harris, who'd framed one of Emma's early sketches for the cafe's wall. The open mic nights still drew crowds, a legacy of the community she'd built. James stopped by one evening, watching her chat with customers, a proud smile on his face. He thought of Ellen, of the promise he'd made to live with purpose, and knew helping Emma was part of it. "You've changed this place," he told her. Emma shook her head, smiling. "You changed me." Their story was a reminder that life's darkest moments can spark its brightest. Emma had been unseen, her strength buried under struggle, until James stepped in, his kindness a beacon that lit her path. Their shared experience as single parents forged a bond that transcended titles or roles, proving that empathy can heal and uplift. Morning Brew was more than a cafe now. It was a testament to what happens when someone believes in another's worth. Emma's journey teaches us that no one is truly invisible. no matter how heavy their burdens. Her resilience, fueled by love, for Noah, shows the quiet power of those who keep going despite the odds. James's compassion reminds us that a single act of kindness, seeing someone, truly seeing them, can ripple outward, changing lives. Their story is a call to look closer, to notice the Emmas in our own lives, the overworked cashier, the tired parent, the person whose strength goes unsung. It's a reminder that we all have the power to lift someone up, to offer a hand when the world feels too heavy. In a society often quick to judge or overlook, this tale urges us to choose empathy, to build communities where no one feels alone. Let's carry that lesson forward, seeking out the unseen and shining a light on their worth. Asterisk, if Emma and James's story moved you, there's more to discover. Legacy Stories is a channel dedicated to tales like this, real, raw, and brimming with the human spirit. From unsung heroes to quiet triumphs, we share narratives that inspire and remind us of the good in the world. Subscribe to Legacy Stories on YouTube and don't miss a single story. Hit that bell icon to stay updated and join our community of dreamers, doers, and believers in the power of kindness. Together, let's keep these stories alive, lighting the way for brighter tomorrows. Thank you for being here, and we can't wait to share the next chapter with you.